Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Alex?
I'm really good.
Good.
A lot has been going on. It's a pandemic, blah, blah, blah. How do we do this? Okay,
Yes.
that's a better lighting. And so obviously I started this thing where I'm
Yes.
like
Love the
life coaching
merch.
now.
Love the merch.
I know, I'm like, what? Who am I? I've never in a million years thought I'd be doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
But it's really been so fulfilling and fun, and it's given me something to do every day, which
Yes.
not a lot of people have, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
especially in the theater community. I think it's a little tricky, like in the beginning at least, or maybe now still, but like finding that purpose because so much of an identity is with theater, but now we don't have that. So it's, how fast you can move on your feet, like what other passions you have and
yeah,
but
and
yeah.
you know what? And what's so interesting, especially about the theater community, because I've been on the search for clients with Find Your Ex, and a lot of people from this industry I end up talking to because they're like, oh, I can relate to this guy, so they talk to me.
Yeah.
And one of the most common things that I hear from all of these people in our industry is that we went from having contracts with people and being so close knit with all these people and being so close, and then it's completely ripped away from us, and
Totally.
now all of our social stuff is completely gone, where we used to be so close and just fall in love with these people in our cast, and now we don't have any of that, and so a lot of us feel just so lost.
It's true.
um,
It's true because it's not only the work aspect of theater, but it's also the social aspect of like making a new family from your cast and your contract. And so it's now that we don't have the industry, but also we're quarantining, like social distancing, there's it both sides for us are gone in a way.
Yeah, and so yeah, we feel, and I didn't even realize how much I relied on it either. Like the social aspects of it all. Like me, I'm a social butterfly, and so
Yes.
I didn't realize how much I needed that in my life, which also kind of led me to this life coaching thing, getting the whole a social thing out there
Yeah.
for me. So
Yeah.
anyway, that was a quick catch up for us, but
Yeah.
I really want to delve into you and what you've been up to, because so you also have a YouTube channel, and it's
Yes.
called The
The
Vlog
vlog
by
by
Ilana,
Ilana. Yep, exactly.
and which is so good, and I loved the vlog, but you just made a switch and
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
doing some astrology stuff, and I would love for you to tell. So I'm going to be posting this on my YouTube and probably every other platform that I have,
Cool.
and I want people to know what you're all about and how you got started and what your mission is, and yeah, just tell everyone what you're doing.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, by the way. And that's so great. And I'll probably put this up on my YouTube channel too. But right now I switched to talking about astrology. I've always been into astrology and like I took a course on it a few summers ago, which is how I really got into it. But I've always just been very into it because for me, it's so like psychological. It's like where psychological meets science, which meets spiritual. It's like the trifecta for me. So that's where I really, really got into it. And ever since that class in the summer, I've just been practicing. I've looked up other astrologers on YouTube and like furthered that, and then just quickly began reading birth charts like in college, and then I sort of picked it back up because I think astrology didn't used to be as popular. Like when I was really into it, it didn't used to be as popular. So everyone like at college or whatever would look at me as like, oh, astrology girl, and like always bombard me with like, oh, well, I'm a Libra. What does this mean? It's like, okay, like
Yeah.
I'm not that person. I've studied it, but so I kind of took a break from it, and actually like it wasn't really big when I went on tour. Like I didn't advertise like, oh, I'm really into astrology, but one of my weird things about me is that if you tell me your sign upon first meeting me, like I will always remember it. I'm that's like a weird thing for me. So I love doing it, and I really switched my content up with starting astrology because I was like, what can people benefit from this? And I needed to make a subject that was like outside of me, like my life story, and like I made a few adoption videos on my channel, which I still love that I have, because that is like the backbone of like all the work I do, and even through astrology it kind of connects. But I really wanted something that people could tangibly have and apply to themselves. So that's where astrology comes in for me.
That's amazing. And what's so cool about all of that is that, so you went from doing this blog, which was kind of about your life, but then it actually turned into like astrology really guiding you through this whole process. And you
True.
made that switch, and now I saw your YouTube just grow fast. And so that you've
Yes.
been lucky in that way too. So astrology is really helping you
Yeah.
in, in your fulfillment of life,
True.
Um,
True.
yeah, which is so crazy. I mean, who would have ever thought?
Yeah.
Um, so do you remember my sign?
Yes, of course I do. You're Sagittarius.
Yeah,
How
I'm a
could I forget?
Sagittarius. But
I weirdly
also,
enough, what? Go ahead.
I just wanted to, I'm also that one, I'm that 13th sign that
Okay.
people kind of brought up.
Oh, yes. Yes,
Yes,
I totally know. Yeah.
I'm in that little gap of uh, that 13th sign thing.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know how much I identified with that area, but I know that I highly identify as a, whatever Sagittarius horoscopes and all that stuff, I highly, identify with everything that it says.
well, I mean, the thing with that, when that 13th sign thing came out, it was very recent. So the way I look at that is like we were born like in our year with 1995 for me. I think it's like the same for, like similar for you. And so that sign didn't exist when we were born. So I just go by, okay, like what did the sky look like? What were the guidelines when we were born? That's our sign.
Right.
But sure, if
Okay.
we're going by the 13th sign now and like a baby's born under that, it's like, oh yeah. But that's just for me. Like that's just the way
And
I look at it.
the whole thing, yeah, that makes sense. But that whole 13th sign, I think it's called Ephesians? Of
Yeah,
something?
it starts with an O. I
It
don't
starts
know
with an
that
O, and
either.
that's all I know. That's all
Yeah.
I know about it too.
Yeah.
But it literally takes up like such a big chunk of Sagittarius. It's like Sagittarius is only like 7 days now. It's like that doesn't. I mean, does that even make sense to do? Like
Right, right.
you're just changing Sagittarius essentially. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
um, I want to know a bit about horoscopes during this time of
Sure. Sure. Sure.
like are some signs possibly going through a harder time during the age of corona or
Okay, yeah.
you
Well,
know
first and foremost, I want to just say that like astrology, your personal astrology, which really means your birth chart. Okay, so your sign, your sun sign might be affected by the pandemic in this way, but then your moon sign might be affected by this pandemic, and then so on, rising, and then all the planets. So everyone, it's not. I don't think I could generalize it, but I will go into the elements and how that might be affected. But also astrology, you can say someone's a Capricorn. Okay, they're like a hard worker. They love hard work, but you don't know their childhood trauma. You don't know their attachment style. You don't know their love language. So everyone
Hmm.
is just truly different. But strictly speaking, on the elements and strictly speaking on astrology, the signs and the energy, but not real people, because people, we're just so complex and we're made up of a whole solar system within ourselves. But strictly speaking on the elements, this is a fun question. I would say that my fire signs, fire sun signs, or just fire energies is like, there's always so much energy to produce. There's never like I feel that out of all the elements, fire signs have the least trouble with being inspired to do something. They're just
Hmm.
like, yeah, this is my passion. Like I want to do this. So I think that might be a struggle with the pandemic because so much is shut down. It's like the suppression of that fire energy. But of course, yeah, just speaking on fire element. Then for earth element, it might be like, okay, this is like a good reset. This is a time I can like really reset myself and focus on how I'm going to delegate my work a little differently. And then for water, it could be extremely, emotionally intense for them because they might be overwhelmed by their feelings and really like need to, reorganize some stuff or like disassociate for a second and then come back. I don't know. But, and then for air signs, the element of thinking and like mental constructs, that might be, an anxiety, or it could be, that restless energy like fire, because fire and air are both quote unquote masculine, not speaking about gender identity, but like yin and yang. Masculine is yang energy, okay? And feminine, earth and water, is yin energy. So my yang energy, my yang elements of fire and air might be like, okay, like I really want to do something. I have all these ideas. I really have this energy to like get something going. And like, look at you and me, like we're air and fire, and we're like we're like doing our, our businesses, our projects. And so, I mean, just like funny example with that way, not to say that like earth and water are like complacent and they don't want to get things moving. Of course, like I said, everyone is made up of all the signs really, which I want to do a video on, but that's strictly speaking on the elements and how that might affect, that nature of those elements.
That's so amazing. And I hope people kind of identify whatever sign that you are, that they're identifying with that. And then once they're able to recognize, or identify it, what they can do to then get themselves to maybe come out of that cycle, or get out of that cycle if it is a negative spiral, that because some energies can, it sounds like, produce like an influence on you, but I know that you can kind of set your energy to get out of negative spirals. And
Yes.
and I don't know what you would suggest, but if somebody is in that negative spiral and is identifying with what maybe their horoscope is saying, which can sometimes be towards a negative area, like how do you first identify that and then go seek out, maybe wanting to change that? Can we change it?
I don't know. That brought up like some really cool stuff for me just now, where I'm sort of thinking of, let's say you're an Aries, you're the first sign of the zodiac, and the Aries is the ram. It's the child of the zodiac. So it just wants to get going. It just wants to do projects. It's like, what do you mean? I don't want to take a rest. I'm just fiery. But if you know that, and you can be like, okay, I'm feeling some restless energy. Like, I wonder where that comes from. Like, I wonder why I feel so much like, angst trying to get going. But like this pandemic, then it can be like, oh yeah, I have an Aries sun or an Aries moon or an Aries rising or this in Aries in one of these planets. And then it can be like, okay, so what's the opposite of Aries on the wheel of astrology? Okay, Libra, what does Libra stand for? Libra is peace, harmony, group mindset, harmony, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, maybe that's like a clue into how I can balance my naturally fiery, passionate energy during this time of suppression through the pandemic.
Yeah.
But that's why you have to really know your chart.
Right. And you know what? I don't know my chart well enough. And it also, it sucks because I don't think I will ever really know my chart because...
Adoption. Same. Adoptees, yay!
Yeah, I know what day for sure for me.
Yeah.
I know some other adopted people really don't even know what day, which is kind of wild. So that, how are they ever supposed to really get a good solid chart? But I know that it's quite a big gap. So if they know like the general time or month, like they can probably get at least your sign. And, obviously...
You can get every planet if you're adopted, because I work with adopted people.
Right.
And with astrology specifically. And what you can do is you can get every single planet except for the rising sign. The rising sign, is dictated every couple of hours. So that's why adopted people have trouble. And the rising sign is important because that dictates the houses. Everyone has like a different lineup of like what planets fall in what houses and like where their wheel of astrology starts, it's different for everyone. So like two Capricorns, or two, you know, I'm using just Capricorn today, I guess, but they can have, you know, different houses lined up. So that's why the rising sign is so important, because the rising sign is the first house. So that's where, you know, us adoptees are like, okay, well, like, where do I go? But you really can find out a lot even if you're adopted. And I really love that. I mean, I'm trying to like set that example.
Mm. The rising sign, I never had clear, a clear, I guess, like I never really knew what the rising sign did for me, because I always just was like, I'm a Sagittarius and never really knew the rising. And what's the other one?
Rising, moon, sun.
Okay, yeah. So I think I'm a rising Scorpio. I think that's what I was told by someone. But like I never really got that, and how it really connects with your overall like me as a Sagittarius. So if I'm a Scorpio rising, how do the two correlate to create who I am?
Well, do you know your moon sign?
I think it's also Scorpio.
Okay. Well, okay, let's just go with, yeah, Sagittarius, Sun, Scorpio, rising, and moon. Let's just go with that. Let's just go with
Okay.
that for now for this example. How I would read that is that the way you express is the sun sign. So you express yourself as, you know, a Sagittarius, the travel, the knowledge, the other cultures, the expansion, the generosity. That is Sagittarius. The philosophy, that's Sagittarius, really. Then let's say your moon sign Scorpio, that could add an emotional depth that sometimes Sagittarius energy misses because they're just so big and fiery, want to go places.
Right.
Scorpio might really harness that and bring like, okay, what's the meaning of this? What's the underlying meaning of this? And then if you had Scorpio rising, that's the way, you know, you go about the world, and that's the mask that you kind of wear to others. So other people kind of perceive that. Sometimes even more so than your sun sign. So if someone says, you know, I don't feel like a Gemini, but then look at their rising sign, because that's like how they go about the world. The rising sign is very important, which is where, you know, I really want to empathize with my like other fellow adoptees, because a lot of us don't have that. But yeah, that's how I would work the three in tandem.
That is so interesting. So there's a lot more benefit to these charts than, you know, just reading like your co-star on, you know,
Yes.
on an app.
Yes.
But
I just made a post about that. Yeah.
yeah, and speaking of that, are there any suggestions for people who want to get started with learning their horoscope and their signs, and like how they can identify with that to create a better understanding for their life? What would you suggest, like, as far as like other Instagram accounts and stuff like that, that they want to like search and research their signs and stuff like that?
Yeah. You know what? It's easier if I just compile a list and send it to you, and you can just do it in the description. But what I will say to that question, because that's a very good question, is that think of the way these apps are designed, you guys. Like, they're designed so billions of people can just like go on it and try to identify with it. They're not created for you. So that I feel like sometimes astrology like acts as an escape for people, because they're just like, oh, this and like all the meme culture and like sanctuary world and like all these very like graphic design type style, like funny. And there's nothing wrong with connecting with astrology in a lighthearted way. Okay, I just want to make sure I say that, because like, who doesn't love joking around like, oh, our two fire, like, I'm a fire sign, you're a fire sign, we're just crazy together. Like, that's fun.
Right,
It's funny,
right.
right? So I don't want to dismiss that, but we really have to be careful, because it's truly a tool for like self-awareness and self-reflection. So if you are truly dedicated to knowing your chart and knowing yourself and knowing your relationships, just pay attention to your birth chart. You know, you can go on Cafe Astrology, just type birth chart in, birth chart calculator in Google, and you'll be able to do it and plug your information of birthday, birth time, birth city, and then look at that, and then really like come back to yourself and your life events, and, you know, your childhood, like how you were with the people who raised you, and you can find a lot of things for yourself that way. So, I mean, I'm not on any apps. I personally don't follow like Sanctuary World. I, again, don't have a problem, but my astrology philosophy falls somewhere different than that.
Right. Well, that's really good to know. I mean, because so I'm a life coach, as you know, and with my coaching, I want to offer a spiritual aspect to it and be able to, show people like, oh, you know what? Like, there's another spiritual side to life and things that maybe can help you look at life at a different perspective. And it might help you to overall change your life. And so I've been wanting to get to know astrology a bit more, which is why I'm doing this with you, is so that I can offer my clients more of a spiritual experience that I can change not only their day-to-day habits in life, but also their spiritual aspects as well.
Yeah, totally.
But I want, oh, just gotta know, okay. But I wanted to also bring up, okay, here we go. Okay. I also wanted to bring up that I have a lot of friends who are also on the more conservative side of spirituality, which is, Christianity and religion.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think a lot of people can or tend to identify spirituality and the horoscopes and astrology side as being a bit more of like the witch talk aspect. And I'm
I
like,
would love to answer this question
and
for
I
you.
and I want you to answer it because it really upsets me because it's not just we're not just witches. I'm not a witch at all. You know what I mean? And neither are you, I don't think. And it's not a devil aspect at all. And so I would love to get your point of view on this subject to tell my more conservative people and friends what that's all about.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so, oh, this is such a deep question. So, first of all, this is like the historical aspect to astrology. Astrology originated in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and what is now known as the Middle East. Okay. So it originated, it's ancient study. When people, in that geography, in that place in the world of like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Middle East, they had like just flat lands and like wide open views of the sky. So they started looking at the sky and looking at the positions of the sun and looking at the positions of the moon and seeing like, okay, our children were born here. Like what qualities might that have? And what patterns do these people have when they're born under the position of the sun in this way and the moon in this way and Mercury and all the planets in these areas? And that was, ancient civilization. Okay. That was ancient. So that came before Christianity, I believe. And when Christianity really took over, and there was a lot of colonization of the world, a lot of the colonization, Christianity came with that. So to civilize people and to colonize them, you have to control them. Like you just have to control them. So part of that was Christianity and religion. And so to me, this was how I was explained it, and it really made sense for me. Christianity or religion, but strictly, Christianity, because that was really the one where I think people cast astrology as like a witch practice. Astrology is kind of like the opposite of Christianity, if you think about it, because Christianity is based in belief and faith, but astrology is based where astronomy meets spirituality. Okay. It's science. So science and, believing in Christianity and, the stories in the Bible, that is opposite. Like that doesn't work in tandem. So that's where you got like, astrology is witchcraft.
Right.
And, burning witches, like all of that, crystals, chakras. So really be careful, y'all. Like when you get into essential oils and crystals and astrology, it's not just memes. Like it's an ancient Black practice. Like Black people hella originated astrology, and we don't give them credit because it did start in those areas of the world. So that's, you know, something I'm very passionate and want to get across in my channel, is just like astrology is ancient. It was first started by Black people. So let's please give some credit to that. And let's really like not reduce it to meme culture and to graphic designs. Because
Yeah.
while I said, you know, Instagram, you know, it's totally okay to connect in a fun way with astrology, right? Of course, not saying anything about that, but as long as we know the history and we're aware, like that's when we can have fun. I think that's just my philosophy on it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. But, and I want to, you know, also say something about like the crystals and, um, uh, you know, like a lot of people like to use sage and stuff. I know I do. And sage is not, it was started by my people, the Native Americans, to get rid of negative energy, not to, and read off bad spirits, not to conjure the bad spirits, not to conjure the devil and worship him. You know, sage was started by Native American people to get rid of, you know, the negative energies around them, to begin a holistic process, which also was astrology, because they looked to the stars and believed in everything that the, you
Yes.
know, the stars ruled everything. Because what else did they have? They didn't have much else to go off of.
Yes.
It
All
was,
these mainstream like spiritual things that people like now, those are indigenous practices.
yeah,
Okay. They're medicine, they're
right,
studies.
right,
So we have to be
right.
very intentional.
Right. And so, you know, you have to give that aspect of that whole, of this whole world respect, and not give light to the people who make it about the witches and, you know, the spells and stuff like that, which is fine in their own right. Like that's what they do. But overall, it, you know, you show it respect because it is an ancient practice, as you said.
Yeah, it is. But it's funny because the same people who might like to deem it as witchcraft, that's the people capitalizing off of it.
Mm.
There is a very clear connect. And the fact that they're capitalizing on something that started as an indigenous practice, it's, you know, it's all linked. Like they want you to think it's not, but it is.
Right. Oh, that is so good. And wait, so this Tommy said it's medicine.
I know
Oh
this is my
dang.
friend Tommy. He's awesome. Yeah,
Ilana
it's
said it
medicine,
here
Tommy,
first,
for
people.
sure.
You said it here first. Okay, well, let me on that. But I wanted to know more about Mercury in retrograde,
Mm.
and why so many people identify with the Mercury in retrograde when things are going bad. Or things are, you know, things are going awry. Um, yeah, just tell me more about what Mercury in retrograde means to you.
Yeah, I think Mercury in retrograde, again, it has become a very mainstream sort of subject or a phrase to say, like, oh, you know, I got,
Mercury's in retrograde.
yeah, like, oh, I ran an errand and like the cashier was like super mean to me. Oh, Mercury's in
Mercury.
retrograde. Like, just
Yeah.
people like to think like, you know, bad things like happen to them, which nothing ever happens to anyone. Well, all right, that's a whole other story. Forget I said that. But Mercury in retrograde is very overused and it is very mainstream. What it astrologically means is that Mercury moves in the opposite direction from how its track normally goes. So Mercury in retrograde, or any planet in retrograde, moves in the opposite direction. What this may mean, okay, for Mercury specifically, is Mercury is the planet of communication, analyzation, travel, and just like contracts, like, and so, you know, they give the advice of like, don't make any like major life decisions during Mercury in retrograde, or don't sign any contracts, or just be very intentional, be really make sure, because sometimes Mercury in retrograde in the mind, since it's really like the little jester planet, it's like the little it's funny, it's the messenger god. Mercury is the messenger god. So Mercury in retrograde, you know, that might mean that we're not thinking all the way rationally, or we're not thinking too clearly, or maybe the words aren't matching up with what we're really feeling or meaning to say. So, you know, that's what it astrologically means. But I think it's almost become like a joke and like in the mainstream sort of phrasing of, oh, Mercury's in retrograde. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I started hearing it all the time when I was living in New York City, and
Uh-huh.
everyone was just like if something bad happened, they're like, ugh, Mercury's in retrograde, Mercury's in retrograde. Or like something weird would happen and they would be like, Mercury's in retrograde. And I was like, yeah, Mercury's in retrograde. Like I just started
Well,
going with
this
it.
brings up something that I wanted to touch on, because I feel like people tend to use astrology as like, maybe not a defense mechanism, but just like a hands up in the air, like, oh, like I've heard people say like, okay, well, you know, I'm a Libra, so I'm indecisive. And it's like, what if the dialogue was, oh, I'm feeling indecisive in this moment. I'm weighing a lot of options in this moment. I wonder where that comes from. Oh yeah, sure, I have a Libra moon. Like maybe it can be that, or like, oh man, like I had a really bad week. Like just this thing isn't working out, and then this thing didn't work out this day, and then this thing, and then you can look and see where the planets are, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe it's a little bit of that. And like I think it can provide comfort instead of people like making it this jail or like this, you know, sort of like trapping entity above them.
Right. So yes, you're exactly right. And what I teach all of my people and what I do on my YouTube and talk about is that everything is like the yin yang, the positive, the negative. Every horoscope has positive aspects and the negative aspects. And it's a breath in and a breath out. So like exactly what you're saying is
Mm.
when you're taking when you're going through life, you're going to have these down moments and it might be the negative aspects of your horoscope, and you can identify that, acknowledge that, don't stay down there. It's a breath in, it's a breath out. Go back up, stay in
I
that
love
high.
that breath analogy.
Yes. And it's just a vibration. We're all constant energy. We're all just moving here in this world, but you want to stay in this flow and not get jagged and go other places. And
Right.
so horoscopes, it's like, yes, identify with the good. That is really good. Listen to what that says. But with the bad, don't be dependent on it. Don't use Mercury's in retrograde. Don't use, oh, well, you know, uh, I can only think of the positive for as Sagittarius right now, but
That's very Sagittarius of you. That's
yeah,
nice.
well, good, you know, good. But it's like when the negative aspects come, it's best to acknowledge it, live in those moments, be like, yes, it could be because I'm a Sagittarius, but guess what? I can get out of it and come into this area of life too. And you know, like I said, it is really a breath in, breath out. You can't breathe in to then and not breathe out ever. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's all a balance, and you can use horoscopes to really get to know each positive and negative aspect of your life. You
Completely
know?
agree. I call it high functioning and low functioning versions of the
Mm-hmm.
signs, and each sign has a high functioning and low functioning. Each sign has a light side and a shadow side, and yeah, I love the breath analogy that you use, and it's true. Every archetype, every sign, every energy, every planet, every placement, like it does. You can't exist one without the other. So it's you have to have both. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's like duh. Like, of course we have all of that, but to so many people, they just, you know, they can't find the flow of it all.
Yes.
And so that's why there's people like you and I here to really get our words out and help people and communicate ways to get life back into a balance. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So did you have any questions for me and
Of
Find
course
Your
I did. I
Ex?
have them right here, baby. I got you. So I feel like, do lives only last 45 minutes? Do any of you guys know?
How
I feel like
what
lives last very short.
they are roughly, are we at what time did we start?
We started at like 2:05.
Okay. I guess we'll find out.
Okay, so let me ask
But
you
we
my most important question.
yeah.
What did you learn about yourself or for yourself in doing this along the way? This life coaching and doing Find Your Ex.
Yeah. So
Okay, thank you, Tommy.
it's kind of like your story too. In college, I started to fall in love with what life coaching was. And I was like, that is so cool. And I even had one of my friends like tell me like, oh my gosh, Alex, I remember you like loving that aspect of life coaching and that you wanted to do it. And it's so cool that you finally started.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was so crazy to me because I literally did a whole life coaching course in college. So I was certified in college, but I never used any of it because I went straight to cruise ships and started traveling and
Yep.
really just kind of forgot that I had it and did nothing about it. I didn't advertise it. I didn't tell anyone. I was just like doing it for myself.
Yeah.
But then of course the pandemic happened and I was looking for fulfillment and I was like, maybe I should write a book. And I was like, what would I even call my book? I was like, I don't want to write a book now, but if I were to write a book later, maybe, what would I call it? And I was like, I'd call it Find Your Ex because, you know, it's about me and my career. First of all, as a dancer, there's constant, like, you know, the X on the center stage and find your X, get to center stage, know your truth. And then on top of that, X also means the higher frequency of life. And so I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. Find your ex. It's my coin. Like I have to use this. And one of the things I learned from my mentors and people that are my life coach is that just get started now. There's no real time limit, and it's like you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I was like, the pandemic just kind of pushed me into this, and I just started. Like I didn't have real long-term plan or anything. So I really just started. I got my YouTube. I got producers for my YouTube to create it.
Yes.
My agent is in on it, and everyone, like there's people, you know, rooting for me to get this up and running, which is so good. And essentially what I started to learn about myself, to answer your question in full, is that by teaching others, for me personally, by teaching people how to get into an aspect of, I always talk about love and fear, and getting into an aspect of love in life, is that I in turn started getting more fulfillment and love in my life by teaching others. And I didn't know that I really kind of needed this life coaching practice and to start life coaching people to therefore find myself, which just kind of set me off on this whole find your ex journey. And here I am now talking to you.
Yeah.
And recommending people to all my friends, because so many of my friends have started these businesses and things that I, you know, can recommend to my clients.
Yeah.
And so it's just so fulfilling. And I'm super excited to see where it goes from here. Like it's only been a month and 2 weeks, a month and a half. So, you know, and a lot has happened since then. So I just can't wait to see where it goes from here. I'm not done dancing. As soon as things get back rolling, I'm gonna, you know, continue dancing and then also continue this practice of life coaching.
Yes, I love it. And I think it definitely works in tandem with each other. And I feel like we have to go in 2 minutes, unfortunately. Yeah. But one last question for you is, what do you want all people and all your clients to achieve? If you just had one thing. I know that's hard, but.
No, I love that question. I mean, here's the deal, is that everyone is born loving themselves. They may not know it and may not identify with what that means, but it's when we're 5 years old, we're not thinking about anything. We're just living our life, happy, playing with friends, no care in the world. And then as we grow older, we see other people doing other things, and then we begin to identify with those things, and then we start doing the things that other people want for us. Yeah. We start acting and believing things like random things that just you never identified with. Programming. Yeah. And so what I want for everyone to know is that no matter what place you're in your life, if you're in a low, you can change it. you can change your mind. You can reprogram your brain, and I always say rewire it to get yourself back into a state of fulfillment and love. And if there's so many clients and people that I talk to who are in this constant state of like, I can't do this, I can't afford it, I want the soulmate, I want this, I want that. And it's like, you already have it all. And it's about retraining your brain, your body, your soul to remember it from that age 5. So that's what I teach, and that's what Find Your Ex is all about. It's finding, and I don't call it found your ex. I haven't found my ex. It's a constant state of, guess what? It never ends. You're still moving.
It's now here. The ex is here, and now it's here. And
yeah, here. Exactly. So once you get to this ex, guess what? It's going to change to this ex, and then that ex, So
but
it's a constant, it's a constant state of, remembering and figuring it out and rewiring and being better and, what I mean?
I love it. And I was also just thinking, like, the ex is always in here, too. So it's just like getting back to home, getting back to you.
Yes.
And that's where the ex is as well. Yeah, I love Gary Vee, the big business speaker guy, Gary Vee. You would love Gary Vee, Alex.
Yes.
And, he said something like, you don't hate yourself. Like, stop saying that. You don't hate yourself. You believe what other people are saying, which in turn gets you on a negative frequency, but you do not hate yourself. Like,
right.
And I love that he said that. And that just really reminded me of what you just said. So
yeah,
thank you so much for having me,
Alex. Of course. And thank you. And everyone, please check out Ilana's channel. Wait, your friends, what is he saying?
As we were going through these cases, tuning out all the negative and not allow that energy to infiltrate. This is a good question, Tommy. And I feel like I have a therapist because I am totally an advocate for therapy. I think it's very stigmatized, but it's like, who wouldn't benefit from therapy? Anyway, side tangent. But my therapist said that, like, as an empath, right, as usually artist types are, we energetically take the emotion and the feeling and thought process of other people. Energetically. We don't even give it permission. We don't even actively seek it. It just comes into us because we're empaths. So what helps me in this is that, like, if I'm spending hours on Instagram and like this happens and this happens and then this, person passed and then this is happening in our world and the politics, like, I have to remember, like, okay, these are the facts, and now I can step back into my home, which the home is the body. The home is you. So it's like, okay, I spent a little time outside doing errands. I spent a little time outside my home, and now I'm back in the safe place. And that really helps me. And I think this is a great question because sometimes we can struggle as empaths too with, like, feeling selfish or guilty for doing that. But, like, as humans, we are supposed to be separate. We are, like, in mentality and in, like, in our feelings, in our makeup, like, we're supposed to be spiritually, like, we have to protect our energy. If we were all supposed to be, these, like, hyper empaths and, like, feeling always what other people are feeling, like, believing, we would be Siamese twins. Like, we are singular bodied for a reason. So I don't know, that kind of scientific way of looking at it almost helps me. I don't know if you have an answer too, Alex.
Yeah, I think if someone were to ask me that, I would say, like I said about the breath in, breath out, negative, positive, yin, yang, there's a lot of negative right now, but guess what? There's going to be a lot of positive that comes from this negative. And so the phrase that I like to tell people and I want people to use is, don't tune out. Don't act like it's not there. Acknowledge the negative. Let's see what this negative is and what it can bring you. This is good because, I always say, like, if someone's in traffic and they got a flat tire, this is good because, oh my gosh, I had to call my best friend that I haven't seen in ages, and now we're closer than ever, whatever. So acknowledge the negative. Don't tune out. That's not healthy. You don't ever tune something out because then you're not acknowledging what's real in this world. So acknowledge it. Know what the negative aspects are and see what they are producing for you in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think on a bigger scale that also works of, okay, all of these horrible injustices are occurring. They are real. Because like we would rather have things bubble up to the surface and be ugly than suppress and
Yep.
disassociate. That is like, that's even lower. That's even lower frequency than bubbling up and truth. And
Right.
here it is. Let's accept it. So, and that's how, like, we can get to the light is by first seeing that it is there. We cannot lie to ourselves anymore. Okay, the
Amen.
line's done, We said goodbye
Amen.
to her.
Yeah. Okay, so in closing, I just
Yeah.
want to say, first of all, thank you so much, Ilana, for doing this with me as like a big spiritual, you're my spiritual guide, honestly. And what I suggest for people to know is that horoscopes and knowing your charts and getting in tune with your spiritual side can affect you in such a positive way, and can therefore set you up for success if you know how to acknowledge your sign and know the whole chart of it all. You know what I mean? To set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know what if you have anything else to say about that.
I love what you just said. I think with social media culture, we do spend a lot of time outside of ourselves. Every one of us who's on Instagram right now, like has an Instagram account, has a TikTok, has a YouTube, has a Facebook. That is spending time outside of yourself. Like, and it's not a bad thing, but we just have to be aware. Okay, I just spent a lot of time in here outside of myself. I'm back inside myself.
Right.
Like, and I think that's the best thing we can do under this pandemic too, because everyone's spending like a lot more time on the screen, a lot more time wallowing at home. So like, we really have to protect our energy. And I don't think we do because we're not interacting in person with people, but believe this is hyperactive in this time.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you
I
have the
love you.
best
Thank you
day.
for having me.
Thank you. I love you so much. And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of requests to do this again about something more specific. And
Yeah.
so I'll let you know.
I'm into it, and I would love to talk with you like about like how life coaching and astrology can like further work, and just
Yeah.
talk with you about opportunities for
Maybe
that.
we can create a course together or something. We'll
Oh
see.
gosh, that would
Can
be
you imagine?
awesome.
Yeah, that'd be really good. All right,
Thanks,
Ilana, I love you
Alex.
so much. Have the
I love
best
you
day
too.
ever.
You too.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone. Thanks for
everyone.
tuning in.
Thank you.